one of the hardest things for beginners is learning how to play bar chords. So I wanted to do a quick video to show how to play it. Hopefully there are some tips in here that will be helpful. So the first thing is, usually one of the first bar chords people learn, or the first bar chord people learn, is the F chord right here. Because, you know, when you're learning your open chords, C, D, G, E, and so on, go through all those, then you get to two problematic chords, or, you know, two or three or four, basically either B or B minor or F, because those require bar chords. You can't, there's no open chord version of those. So that being the case, F is usually the first bar chord that people start to learn. However, the problem with that is that this is the hardest bar chord to play. I mean, as far as this bar chord shape is concerned, the F is the hardest one because it's on the first fret. And the first fret, the tension on the strings right here, right next to the nut, is highest. It's higher than it is anywhere else along the string. The string is a lot more flexible here in the middle of the string, where it can bend more than it is right here. Also, if if your nut is cut a little bit high, it could be even harder. So if you're playing on like maybe a cheap guitar or a good guitar that's not set up right, it can be really hard to bar these notes on the first fret. So I would suggest when you're first starting to learn a bar chord, don't learn it here. Learn it up higher on the neck where it's easier to play. Also, the frets are closer together up here too, so that makes it a little easier. So do it on the 7th fret, for example. So that's what I'm going to show you here. So that's tip 1. Tip 2 is making sure that you have enough space down here. This has a lot to do with the position of your arm. So if you want to play a bar chord, you really have to get there needs to be a fair amount of space in here between your palm and the bottom of the neck. So you don't want to, I'm going to lift my elbow up now and show you how this collapses in here. The more I do that, the more this whole shape kind of collapses, and I have no space in here, and it makes it really hard to get a good bar here. So if I drop my elbow down toward the ground a little bit, then I can have this space and I can get a nice straight bar with this first finger. Okay, so that's tip number 2. Make sure that just look at my arm right now in my hand and watch how I drop it a little bit to make it easier. As you get better, the amount that you drop it is going to be less. You won't have to do it as much. But in the beginning, to make things easier on yourself, think about pointing your elbow down toward the ground a little bit rather than back behind you. All right, so there's basically 2 parts to this bar chord. There's the bar itself, which your first finger is doing, and then there's the individual notes that your other 3 fingers are doing. So these fingers, you want to make sure you're playing with the tips of your fingers, like this, right? Because if you flatten them out like this, it's going to get in the way of the other strings and deaden them. So the trick with the bar chord is being able to play a bar here, but also being able to play with the tips of your fingers here. So that's something that you just have to get with trial and error and practice. So focusing on the bar, one thing you can do is just forget about these 3 fingers and just try and get a good bar. And a really important thing about that, and this is related to dropping your elbow, is that your thumb needs to be in this position. Let me see if I can do this. Basically like this. You don't want your thumb wrapping around the neck. You don't want it going like this. You want it to be sort of perpendicular to the direction of the neck and fairly low or in the middle. Okay, that's going to be really important in getting the right angle for the bar. It'll give you the best leverage to keep the bar strong across the whole neck. So you want to play the bar, go through each note one at a time like this. And just make sure you can hear them all clearly. What will happen a lot is in the middle here, these middle strings, you'll hear it start to kind of deaden out if you're not doing it right, like this. You'll hear this kind of thing. And that's because this is not pressing down enough. So when you make this bar, think about pressing down with the middle of this finger. Don't worry about this end here and this part here. Those will come automatically. Focus on pressing this down into the neck, like that. Okay? It's going to take some experimentation. Also, you want to think a little bit about kind of playing with the edge of the finger here a little bit. Not so much the flattest part, but a little bit of the edge. So just kind of experiment with rolling it a little bit to get, to see what works the best for you. So while you have that, then you have to add in these fingers here. And again, the key with these is to make sure that you're playing with the tips. If I lay these fingers down a little bit too much and I flatten them out, when I go through each note, well, that one wasn't that bad, but like you hear this note right here, this string is not ringing out because this finger is laying too flat. So if I play with the tip of that finger, then it sounds a little better. My guitar's a little out of tune, sorry. All right, I think that's it. Hopefully that will help.